Yes, you've guessed it, I'm back. Well, what have we got today? Well, we got something really very, very different than what I normally do. Although I have done this sort of thing, well, historically, but it was a while back. And yeah, what am I going to do? There's nothing on the bench. Oh, there is. What's that? Well, that, as you can see, is a great big list. Well, maybe you can't see, but don't worry about it. Just take my word for it. It's a great big list of parts and components. Well, I hate to say it, but I'm going to take all them components that you've just seen. There's a great big box of them down over there. And I've got one of these things. Yeah, it's called a circuit board from an Australian fella. You'll know what I mean if you followed any of this stuff. Yeah, and it fits in a Marshall amp. And this picture isn't meant to be anything special. You'll get to see far more of the finished thing, and as we do it, as we go through this video, it could be quite long, and it might actually never even work. But hold your breath. Yeah, the finished thing will probably look something like that. Yeah. It's one of them Marshall Origins. You've seen them. There's one down there, because I bought one. It's a 20 watt, by the way. You can do this on a 20 watt or a 50 watt, but I copied this off the video, and that's what it's got to look like when it's done. I just thought I'd photograph that because it could be a bit important. Let's show you the amp. Poof. Yes, here it is. Yeah, two EL34s, Marshall branded, an Origin 20 watt, as you can see. It says on, hopefully you can see it, made in Vietnam. So you've got Vietnamese transformers and the rest of it. But don't hold it against it, because these you can pick up for about about £400 in the UK. Now, I'm not sure what you can pick them up for in America or somewhere in Europe. That's another story maybe. But here it is. And, you know, a lot of guys have said, oh yeah, well, it's okay, but. That's fair enough. So what the Australian did is, and his friend's name Evolve DIY. I might put something on the screen so you can find them. And they said, yeah, well, we've done loads of mods, but what we really want to do, let's bring this back. What we really want to do is we want to take all this out, get it out of there, except for the backplane. And we've got a new board. We've made or invented or designed or developed, use which one you want, to turn this Origin 20 into an absolutely fire-breathing monster. And when it's all finished, assuming it ever does work, assuming it works, yeah, anybody who looks at the Origin on the stage will be thinking, how's he do that? Yeah, it's brilliant. Let's have a look at the board before we carry on. Well, here's a quick look at the board. You can see the sort of quality that it is. It looks pretty good to me. I don't know, what have you got? Well, you can see it's made by Evolve DIY, can't you? Yeah, it's for an Origin 2050, and this is revision 1A, by the way. I know there are various revisions. Various bits and pieces go on this, and you have another little board that I can just show you, which is for the front controls, and that's also by Evolve DIY. It was originally designed by a company called, I think, Sirius. Yes, Sirius Amplification, and that's also in Australia. So yeah, very nice board. It's quite thick as well, which is an interesting thing, and if you want a quick look at the back, let me turn it over for you. And there's the back of the board. So here's a picture of the back, and as you can see, it's all very nice. Yeah, all laid out properly, and a really cool job. Now, of course, all you've got to do, simply they say, is just fit the components and slap them in that amp, and you're in business. But of course, just slapping them all so they're just in the board nice and easily like that isn't quite as easy as what you might think. Or some people might have you believe. You don't want to get things wrong, do you? Well, if you do, you can always fall back to the original board. But then you wasted a bit of money. More about the price of the board later when we talk about the company and the rest, but I'm going to get on with the build first, I'm afraid. Why not? Now then, seriously, if you're going to have a go at this, you need a whole box full of parts, and I've been ordering these for weeks and weeks on end. Sometimes a bit slow. Bags full of components. You can see them here. I mean, we're talking mega quantities. So how do you proceed with a project like this? Well, there are lots of ways, and you can go on the internet and watch thousands of guys that are experts, just go bum, 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 all done. It's all great. But this video isn't all about being an expert. You don't have to be an expert. You have to have a little bit of practice so you don't kill yourself. And I warn you about that right now. If you're not capable, don't do it. Don't come to me well, somebody will come to me later and say, hey, you told me to do it. No, I didn't. Do it of your own risk. Oh, me? Well, I've done them before, so remember that, won't you? Yeah, I'm not as stupid as I look. I'm not as stupid as you look either, now you can mention it. Because I bought these particular ones from Mauser. I don't know whether you can actually see Mauser on there. You might. They're all very nicely defined on the front of the packet. So I haven't got to go through putting them on, checking this, doing that, doing the other. They're all there. This one, for example, is a Vichy metal film resistor, through-hole, ROS compliant, 2 watt, 4.7 kiloohms, 5%. Yeah, I couldn't want more, could I? So, yeah, the simplest answer is move these over there a little bit. Get the soldering kit out and find them as you go. Yeah, sounds like a plan. I think that's what I'm going to do. So, yeah, hold on. Now, if you're anything like me, you're probably going to need one of these things. Yeah, these are great for when you're doing this sort of assembly stuff, you know. And away you go. It just stops the table getting damaged. You can put all your little components in and so much more. It's like a silicone type of thing. And I tend to use something like that. So I think I'll work on the assembly like this. I'll fit them in this one first, all these resistors, and then fit the resistors on the other little control board, if there is any, there might be, and we'll go from there. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, well, so good so far. We've got a pile of components here. You just love that, that's fantastic. You've got a pile of components. You've got the diagram, well, it's not a diagram, the list, or the bill of materials, they call it, to work from. And it does actually tell you each component, its resistance, or whatever it is that you're on, and where they fit. How easy could it be? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and show you how to fit one, and then we'll get on, and I'll fit the rest, and then I'll be back. We don't want this video to last 90 hours, do we? Not fitting just little resistors and things like that. Some people do that, but not me. Now, I do hope that this video actually will inspire you to go and create either a kit or upgrade an amp or do a mod or do whatever. But the thing is, it's like everything else. If you take your time and you go slow enough and you ask enough people, especially if you're not familiar with doing any of it, then that's a good thing, and that's what you will be needing to do. Me, I'm trying to create the video for you, really, rather than me. I've got more amps than hot dinners, and to be honest, I don't even need the origin or the board or anything else. This video is entirely paid for by me. It's not sponsored by the Australian or Evolve or what's his name, Sirius, or any of them people. I'm just telling you what my experience is so far and what it will be as we move forward. A lot of my problems, I'll call them that, might be down to me. They might not be. I have built amps before, and doing this isn't really that hard. Although there are a few things that when I get to them, I'll explain the difficulty. So I'm going to go and get that first resistor and fit it, and we'll go from there. So guys, anybody who's got the remotest interest in any of this sort of stuff, or looking inside equipment that I review, because that's just as important, to look at the quality of the stuff that's inside, do subscribe, won't you? Do that thumbs up thing and ring that bell, because, well, if you don't, ultimately I'm not going to carry on spending money for people who don't care. A lot of my subscribers do care, which is really the reason I'm still here. Yeah, so let's get down to it, and thanks for watching, by the way. Okay, well, here's the resistor, tiny little thing. I've got a little pair of pliers as well, and what I tend to do is I take a pen and identify where the bit's going to go on the board by just taking a little black dot and touching it in the centre where it's going to go, because that way there's no ifs or buts or ahs. You look carefully, you can possibly see that there. Might be a picture on the screen, but that's where the resistor's going to go. So what you do want to do is don't just bend the legs over and try and ram it in. What you want to do is to try and set this up so that when you bend the legs, you've got an idea that it's going to fit in the hole okay, rather than yeah, just zapping it together any old way. Well, that's probably somewhere near. And as you can see, it's sort of fitted in there, and what we want to do is turn the board over and just bend them legs out a little bit so it can't fall out. And that's all there is to it, really. Once you've got that far, well, you can move on to the next one. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and take that whole pile of resistors over there and fit them on this board. Yeah, that should be exciting. And then when I've fitted them, we'll come back and do a bit of soldering. That's what I think. So I'll see you in a minute. Well, I have the board actually done. Well, it's got to be soldered with the resistors, and there's a story to that, and it's part of telling you how I'm going on with the kit, if you will. Well, here's the bill of materials, and you can see the bill of materials. That was where I'm working on resistors, and you can see a line there and a line there. So the resistors here, all these resistors, are fine. But once you come down to, in fact, on this sheet, R63 and onwards, up to R75 inclusive, funnily enough, there's nowhere for them on the board. So that cannot be right. This bill of materials has to be wrong. From there down you've got trim pots and things like that, and above that you've got capacitors and all the little pieces and components. But if you look here, maybe you can see them. Let me just pick one of these up, and you'll see that I've marked it as R36, so I can't really get it wrong. If R36 has been fitted, which it has down there, it's been ticked, it's in the right place, and I can tell you that R36 is 27k, and it's one more, yeah, and there it is. So all this pile here, they're all fitted, every one of them. Well, I've got a pile over here that were on the bill of materials that are basically pretty useless to me, you or anybody else. Well, they're not useless, but they don't fit anywhere on this circuit, which is a bit weird. I just want to get that across to you. So I'm going to move the camera down so you can have a quick look here, and yeah, and then I'll go and solder them, and then we can move on to the next little chunk. There's a couple of funny things on this, some of my components, but they're all seemingly okay. Looks like that's going to work. Yeah, so if you're into this stuff, I mean, anybody could really do this with a little bit of organisation and thought. And that's all you really need, organisation and thought, and a bit of luck. And maybe the odd multimeter. So there you have it. There's a pretty close view of where I've got so far. On these two here, I had to sort of stretch the legs out a little bit to make them sort of fit the hole, which they will when they've got a bit of solder on. This one's moving around because I'm going to lift it off the board a little bit, because I'm like that. And all the rest of it, well, in theory, is probably correct. But if it isn't correct, you mark my words, I'll find out sooner or later. So, if you're working on the kit, you can follow me if you want. Now, I could be right and I could be wrong on these, but I think I'm right. But if I'm wrong, don't blame me. And if I'm right, you can thank me in the text below. But there they are, all nicely fitted. We even got some off the board there. Yeah, I like to see that, don't you? So we've got all the big ones on, well, for now. And all the little ones on, and all soldered. Well, I wouldn't say very nicely, but good enough for what I need. Well, there it is. A big fat packet of capacitors that have got to go on there. Well, there's probably other things in there too. Let's pull one out. What's this one say? It says, yeah, 25 volt, 6,800 microfarads AEC, Nichicon aluminium electrolytic capacitors, radial, ROS compliant. As if you care when you're doing this. Anyway, that's one of them. But there's a big pile of stuff. So I'm going to do basically the same thing I did before. You get this sheet over here. Remember that one? Of course you do. And we start at the top and we go down, fitting capacitors in all these places where it says. And it's relatively easy because, like I said, I bought these from, where are these one? Yeah, these are from Mauser 2, it says on. If you can see that near my thumb. Mauser. So they all come ready packaged and ready to fit. That makes things so much easier than faffing around, trying to do it the hard way with your little meters, or trying to read any one of 5 different colours on the resistors. As you get older, it gets harder. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit them all in place, and I'll show you before I solder them. Ah, there you are. You see, it's just 2 minutes to you, but it's been about a couple of 3 hours to me. That's just the way life is. That's what it's like when you're inside the Evil Owl Studios. Time just flies past. Okay, well, I'm at the point where I've fitted a load of stuff. I've still got a few things missing. The odd capacitor and things like that. A little switch is missing. The input socket's missing. A few things like that. It's all interesting stuff. But I think most of it's getting there. It won't be long now. I didn't have any sockets either for the tubes. Yeah, and the reason I had no sockets is they're not mentioned on the... They're not mentioned on this thing, this list. In fact, there's so many things not mentioned on there that, well, it's an interesting list, but it could have been a lot better, it could have been accurate. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a new parts list for this as I did it. And that'll be down below where you can drag a copy off. Now, if it's incorrect, don't come moaning at me. I had much trouble as you doing this stuff. And yeah, I can say that's a fact. Now, I did explain how I've arrived at where these parts fit and stuff like that. And that's great for most of them. The odd one is a bit of a problem, but I'll get around that. And of course, I've got the list of components that ended up not fitting because, well, although they're on the list, the fact is that they don't fit. There's nowhere to put them. They talk of sockets that don't exist on the board. There's another pile over there. Let me show you them. I mean, they're all here. They're all there to see. There's plenty of them as well. Yeah. Those are the resistor packs and things like that. Now then, those connectors. Can you imagine fitting them in there? And you turn your board over and they fall out. Because you can't actually bend the pins anywhere because they're not long enough. So what I normally did was to put a little screwdriver underneath or something just to keep them in there, but it didn't always work. And sometimes you can be warming them up, yeah, with putting solder on, and they fall out. Then your holes are all blocked up. It's hard work. Well, it could be, except for one thing. Now listen, none of this is sponsored. This is stuff I do myself. And I found this on, I think this was on Amazon. Preamble de-soldering pump. There it is. Doesn't look much. I think it was about 20 odd pounds or something like that. In fact, here it is. And all you do with this is you plug her in, and it's got a nozzle on the end, and it'll warm up. And when it does, you can do this, the desolder mode. And what's great about that is that it melts the solder before it drags it into this piece, and then you can take this piece out, clean it out, and start again. So very useful little device, especially if you want to get bits off at some stage. Yeah, very important and very useful, I must say. That's why I talked about it. Now, as you can see here, I'm coming along with the front as well. In fact, I think the front's almost finished except for these little connectors. And that's the next problem, because when you look at that parts list, it doesn't talk about them little connectors at all. Now, you might say, oh yeah, but they're just connectors. It's about 30 types, and you've got to match them up with what's already in the amp. Now, it is important to get them sockets right. You can buy just the sockets and the rest of it. You can buy them all on eBay. And the ones I opted for, which might be wrong, and if they are wrong, they'll have to go back, with the type that are called EH 2.5mm PCB socket 2 to 8 crimp connector, a JST EH style. That's what they are, I think. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll send them back, and if I'm right, well, you won't have to go through the hell I have trying to find them little things. They're a right pain. Do remember that down at the bottom in the text there'll always be more information and more things about the problems that I had, and a link to my website where you might even see the whole review discussed on there, that sort of stuff. And once again, I'm waiting for parts, believe it or not. Yeah, it's back to wait again. And I can tell you, this is a project that's been going on for about, well, I had the boards that came all the way from Australia, by the way. They took a week or two to get here, that sort of thing. And then I did nothing because I was doing other stuff. But basically, you're going to be working on this. If you're not in a particular hurry, or you didn't order all the parts, or you just followed this, because that's miles out. Or you're going to end up with this probably going to take you a number of weeks, if not more than a month. Then you've got to do the testing and the rest, haven't you? All that stuff that goes with it. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a real great project to have a go at, if you've got a clue. Haven't got a clue. I'm just building this from their instructions, and the reason I'm doing that, rather than, sorting all that mess out first, is to show you what you get. And if what you get's wrong in some way, which it definitely is, yeah, well, you'll learn from my experience, so that if I can generate those correct documents, they'll be down there below, or on my website, might be there, could be somewhere, but there'll be a link to wherever they are. I think it's so important to cover all that. Now, the next time you see me, it will probably be a week from now, although it's a snap of fingers for you. And the reason it's a week is that I'm still waiting for parts, like I said. In the meantime, of course, yeah, well, you're waiting the 20 seconds. Why not subscribe? Yeah, I have built them historically, but this is the first one in a number of years that I've bothered to do it. I'm getting older, it gets harder. But it might be something you like, and you might like the reviews I do, because often I pull them apart and show you what they are made like. Yeah, it's always important. So don't forget to subscribe, do that thumbs up thing, and tick all for, notifications. Otherwise, or even if you do tick all notifications, you don't always get the notifications. I have learned from friends. So I'll be back, I'm going to snap my fingers, and it'll be probably a week away. It's been seconds to you, but another week's passed to me, because getting the bits and fixing the bloody bits and pieces that don't seem quite right to me, yeah, it's part of the job. So what I'm going to do, so I have a quick look at the board. It's not finished. I've still got parts I'm waiting for, and there's been one or two, well, hiccups along the way. These hiccups haven't been so simple. to just put right. Yeah, there's one or two funnies going on, but don't worry about that. I'm going to bring the camera in closer. Let's put this on a stand and I can just go over a few things where I've had trouble or I haven't had trouble or that sort of thing, you know. Okay, well, while we're having a quick look at this, I'm only going to talk generally about the components that I've had trouble with. And you might have trouble with too, or you might not, or you might find that the bill of materials is perfect and all the rest of that, but I doubt it somehow. Okay, let's have a quick look from one side to the other. What did I have trouble with? Finding the odd little capacitor. This one I had a bit of trouble with. Just different capacitors, and these two here, originally they were much smaller than that, the ones I'd found and bought, which is a pity. The spec was right, but they were tiny little things, so I decided to upgrade them. Moving along a bit further, there's the 0.18 nanofarad capacitor that took me eons to find, and that's C21. Yeah, bit of a pain in the neck. This one's another pain in the neck here. It's a great big capacitor, and on their build, they've got a sort of small capacitor, but same specification. I couldn't find a small one. All the ones that I found, $630 or whatever it was, and whatever this is set to, which I forget now. They were always big as this, so that's been botched in there. It won't make much difference, I doubt. I've talked about these earlier, I believe, these little connectors. And while these small ones are all fine, I've got a specification for them that'll be on the bill of materials, that'll be downloadable below the video and the text. That's important. But these big ones here, there's one there. There's another one somewhere. Let's have a look. Well, at least the big one, or the big ones, these did not fit properly. They're the same exact specifications as everything else, but it's almost like the holes on the PCB are actually too small to fit the pins through. Yeah, so I ended up filing those down. Another thing I had trouble with, I ordered these things, you can see them there, two little adjusters, there's one here and one there. And the ones that came, I must have ordered them wrong, they were standing up on end. So if you think about this one standing on end, well, you wouldn't be able to adjust it. So I put capacitors in that were bigger, which again I got wrong. I'm like that. Right specification, but bigger. And I thought, okay, well, I'll be able to adjust it between the two legs of this one, so to speak. But ultimately, I changed those and I put the two adjusters to what they should be, which I think's a good point and a fair enough plan. I had trouble getting this heatsink for this regulator. I think it's a regulator, pretty sure it is. Whatever it is, anyway, there it is. What else did I have trouble with? Not a lot, really. These spades, these are fun. Yeah, I think there's 10 of them you need, and the pack I had got 9 in. I ended up getting another pack, which is also pretty much fun. I don't have the fuses in there yet, but I'm not too worried about any of that. I might put a bit of glue around these just to keep them in place. Or not. I don't think it makes that much difference to me with them being static in a studio. So that's it for that piece. I still don't know what this switch does. I haven't been on any forums speaking to other guys. I don't really want to do that. I want to learn myself. But there's a switch here that purportedly does something, but I have not yet found out what it does. We'll find out later, probably when it's fired up and running, if it ever does run, and we'll go from there. Okay, well, that's the control board at the front that I've fitted the pots in. I had a bit of a problem getting hold of the pots. They came from Bear something or other in some place around the world. Eventually I did get them, and I got the other pots from somewhere else, but they were just awkward as well. I noticed on this one, on this board, that you've got a little connector there for LEDs. Now there's another one there for LEDs, but on their finished amplifier, that as I saw it at least, there was no LEDs in either of them. you've got a VCC connection there. I've got no voltage table either, which is a little bit frustrating when we get to look at it in the hand. But we'll see about that in the next section. There's the other big connector, which, like I said, I had to also file down the pins just a little bit to make it fit. All these other ones, exactly the same spec, fitted perfect. So I don't know the answer to that. And to be honest, I don't really want to know the answer to it. All I know is eventually I did it. This little connector that's like the input for the amp, by the way, wasn't listed in the bill of materials either. So I had to go and get one of them again a little bit later. And that's the story of my life with this so far. It's go and get the bits later, or where is it and why hasn't it arrived type of thing. All a bit hard work. They might have done well if they'd have supplied or sold the whole board as a kit, so you could get the parts off them. And obviously you've got to pay for them and all the rest of it, but that would have been a big improvement over the route I've gone down with an incorrect bill of materials. That's the easiest way I can. Well, here it is. The board's completed. And the dreaded C21 is now fitted in place. The 018 nanofarad. Yeah. Or is it 180? It's 180. Yeah, it's 018 microfarads. You've got to get them right, haven't you? Well, there it is. And yeah, it all looks good. What can I say? Taken a long time to get here. I had problems with one or two components, and I won't bore you too much with them, but I'll probably talk about them in the summing up at the end, I think. Let's carry on and get this done. Yeah, so the main board's assembled, the controls are assembled, and it's all rock and roll. So I'm going to go and get the other amp, put it on here, take all the bits out, put this in, and let's move forward, eh? Well, here's the Origin 20 donor amp, we'll call it that. And what I've got to do is whip everything up. But what I strongly suggest you do is photograph this before you start. Otherwise, you might go round in circles a bit. And you want the drawing as well. I'll show you the drawing in a minute when we've got the other bits out. And yeah, we'll go from there on what I do and what I don't do. Yeah, should be fun, shouldn't it? I'm going to start getting this apart anyway. Well, okay, as you can see on mine here, this is the amp as it sort of comes to you. You've got all this front bit to take out, and you've got all these connections to take off. And yeah, you only really need to know where they go on this board if you're ever going to refit it, which that might be the situation, not too far away, but it might not. And so it's a question of pulling all the bits out and you know, moving forward with it as you can. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and take it apart now. It's pointless showing you how I connect a few wires and plug a few things in, and I'll be back in a minute. It's the easiest answer. Oh, and by the way, when you look at this here, a lot of this switch sits here with these three wires. There is no connection for that switch, and you won't have a low, mid or high unless that switch on the other board controls that. But we'll see about that a little bit later. I've only got the information I've got. It's as simple as that, really. I don't really want to go to, you know, forums and things like that, because I want to do it from what information I've got at hand. And I have to say, the information I've got at hand isn't that great, but we'll see how we get on. And I think that's the fairest way to do things. Okay, well, before I go any further, you can see I've had the de-soldering tool out here. You're not going to believe me. So basically, I ordered all these parts, and some of them were off eBay, some of them were Mauser, some of them were this, some of them were that. And this is the board that's come out, not the board I'm fitting. And you can see them right there, yeah. The 12AX7 sockets that are PCB mounted. And one of the problems was that the original ones I ordered never arrived. One of them Chinese types, you've seen them. I think he was an eBay type. Anyway, they never arrived, so I just ordered some more 9-pin sockets and just banged them into the other board down here. What a mistake. I never even bothered to look. I just put them in because they fitted. Let me show you the problem. Yeah, very nice. Got a 12AX7 here. Yeah, well, there it is. And yeah, it fitted in the board fine. It's really weird. 9-pin socket, all the rest. There's only one problem. Have a look at the picture on the screen right now, because they're the wrong socket by miles. But they're not actually for an EL34 or a 6L6 or anything like that. They are a 9-pin socket, 3, 6, 9. Yeah, but they don't fit a 12AX7. So poor old Tony here had to desolder all of the 3 back off the board that I'm putting in. When I got to fit the board, I just never checked. And you know, the reason I'm showing you this is because, just trust me on this, you can do the same. You can make the same mistakes, crazy mistakes. I had no intention of making that mistake, and I did actually order the right ones in the first place. The Chinese guy, as always, let me down. And about a week ago, oh, they're late. I already know they were 2 weeks late. Now they're another week late. They're still not arrived, and they probably never will, because that's what you get with some of these Chinese people suppliers. Some of these suppliers that are down in China way, and don't care. Yeah, because they know they're that far away. To get resolved is not easy. Anyway, that's the point. I've made the point. There you go. And I'm going to get some new sockets for tomorrow, by the way. Yeah, for tomorrow. And in this instance, I got them off Amazon. But they'll fit in there. Perfect. Exactly right. And then you'll see me fitting the board. Okay, well, just before I do put this one to bed. Yeah. Well, how did I get the sockets up? Well, it's a bit of a pain in the neck. But I've got this thing. And by the way, I bought this. Nothing to do with promotion or anything like that. This is called a Preamble de-soldering pump. Yeah, there it is. In fact, it's here. There it is, sitting there. Now unplugged. Yeah, it's unplugged. It's all safe. But it cleaned the holes out absolutely 100%. So no real problem, except that I've had to take them back off. And I just wanted to show you that, because I can recommend it. It's quite good. That's all I can say. Anyway, enough of that. Here we are. Further down the road. Might have been a few seconds to you, but it's a week or two to me. Oh my God, I've even got that on my hand. I've been at a guitar show today, yeah. Never got around to cleaning it off yet. I thought it'd look good, didn't you? Anyway, here we are, the Marshall board and the Evolve DIY board. That's what I'd call this one, yeah. And as far as I can see, it's pretty much complete. There are a few things slightly I've had aggro with. And I might have covered them earlier in the video, but I just want to cover them for completeness of the latest the latest problems I had going down the road. Yeah, the first one involves these little things. You can see a picture on the screen right now. What they are is they are PCB mounted spades for the wires that are already in that board, in the original Marshall board. Well, what did I do? I bought the PCB and I got the bill of materials and I ordered everything I should, and there are some things missing. That's always going to be down into the text below this video, and I might even make a file that you can go and download with all the things I found, and I might even put it on my website, TonyMcKenzie.com, so you can see what I did and how I did it. Trust me, it'll be worth reading. But these things here, these spades, I made a guess at about 6 mil. And you know, I was right. So I put them all in, soldered them all into the board. Then I was wrong. Well, Tony, what do you mean? Then you was wrong. Well, you can believe this or not, that every one of these little spades, the small one, the 4.8 mil, was in all of the ones necessary to fit. except for two, and those were the two yellow ones that are sitting there on the board. You'll see them later. And they are the 6 point whatever, and all the others are the 4.8 whatever. And that caused me to desolder all of the 6 point somethings that I'd fitted right across the board. What a nightmare. It's awkward to do even if you've got the tools. Don't let anybody tell you it's a walk in the park, man. Because it isn't. It isn't a walk in the park if you make a mistake. And that was the sort of mistake I made by not actually going to the amplifier and actually taking a look at the actual size of the connectors. I know it sounds so obvious, but I would have expected to be honest, I'd have expected these spades to be on the bill of materials, and they're not. I can't find them anywhere. Well, as you've probably seen earlier in the video, the tube doesn't fit because it's the wrong socket. What can I say? The sockets are not particularly highlight either on the bill of materials, which I think is a bit weird. Nobody's giving you the proper information. So I bought some more, desoldered 3 of them, and resoldered the correct ones. That was phase 2. Now before we go any further and fit this into that chassis there's another thing I want to tell you. You can see it right there. There. Can you see that? Yeah, it's got, let me lean it over, it's got a low, a mid and a high output. Yeah, that's what it's got. That's on the amp. And the wires come across here and go down to this thing here. There's only one problem. There's nowhere to fit them on this board. And I noticed on the Headfirst stroke Evolve, we'll call it the Headfirst Evolve demo, that theirs was blanked off. So clearly there's no any one of those 3 settings. You've got this other thing too, this little switch here, which tells me this relates to bias type. Now theirs is fitted on this side and mine is fitted on this side, and the reason for that is I don't actually want to drill the chassis and poke a 2-way switch through. What I want to do is leave it there, and if I want to change it any time, I'll come and switch it. Once you're happy with it, you're happy with it, aren't you? Of course you are. At least that's my way of thinking. So honestly, I wanted to go through all these things. I've also covered historically the 8-pin little white connectors on the board and the filing down. It's covered earlier. If you're not sure, go back through the video and watch what I actually say, because I think if you were going to have a go with this, it would matter, because nobody else tells you. They don't tell you the size of those little white connections or the types and the rest. Again, it's all down, or hopefully it will be all down in the text of this video, because I want to try and help as much as I can. Just an ordinary guy like me. Listen, I'm no top-notch engineer or anything like that. I've built some amps before, but yeah, I'm no expert. You know, I'll do my best, and that's all that matters. Now listen, while we're on the subject of me helping you, like I am, well, at least I'm trying, aren't I? Yeah, why don't you help me? Why don't you do that subscribe? Click that button to subscribe. Yeah, do that thumbs up thing. Hit that bell. Dong. Or is it ding? I don't know. It's one of them. In any case, do your best to help me rather than me just helping you in a one-way type of thing. Yeah, costs a lot to make all these videos. You'd be surprised at the costs, and I try and recoup some of it back in the best way I can. And that's through people subscribing and watching videos. It's no use making videos if nobody wants to watch them, is there? At least I try. I'm not being told what to do by, well, Headfirst or Evolve DIY or anybody else for that matter. I'm trying to help you. So do remember that, won't you? And thanks for the help if you did subscribe. Well, it's near enough time to go and fit this mother in, this motherboard. And yeah, there's the chassis. So we're going to plug it all in. Hopefully it'll work. Well, I'm going to take you through it as I go. I'm going to go and fit this first. There's nothing special about that. You don't want to watch me fastening a few connections, but when it's in there, we'll take it forward from there, because you don't want to get killed when you do this, do you? Oh, you want me to get killed when I do it? No, you don't. Oh my God, you guys. Yeah. So there are procedures to go down, and if you haven't got the kit, or you don't know what you're doing, like me, don't do it. Oh, me? Well, I've had a good life. So I'm going to fit this now, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I just wanted to point out this sort of thing. Do remember that there's little nibs on these things. You can see them. I hope you can. There'll probably be a photo. What you need to do is to just snip them nibs off before you fit it into the amp. Yeah, very important, and you'll have trouble if you don't. Here are all the switches that I've swapped out with the board, and it's great except for one thing. There's something else they don't bother tell you, of course. Oh yeah. So now you've got to buy a whole pile of knobs, or botch the original ones. I'm not really for botching the original ones, so for now, if you wonder why there are no knobs on there, well, it's quite simple. They're incompatible. You've got to spend some more money. Okay, here's something else you want to be careful of, is when you're fitting the main board, you can see that this one's just slightly out of alignment. Now you can pull that into place. It's not really too difficult to do it, but you really need to be a little bit careful when you're making sure that these are actually going where they should be. I just wanted to mention that because it's not mentioned anywhere. Okay, well, at the very least, your 3 preamp tubes and your 2 power tubes should be mounted so that they're in the middle properly, and these are pulled up to the depth of about 1/8 of an inch, give or take. They sort of stick through by that much, and that's probably quite important. It helps to keep the board where it should be. And I've screwed in the other side. Well, let's take a quick look. Okay, well, everything hasn't been fitted yet. There's still some wires dangling off and that sort of thing, but I've started to put the stuff in place, and you can see that, well, there it is. It seems to fit. Make sure you get these screws for the motherboard. Yeah, tighten, make sure they tighten properly, won't you, and all that stuff. And I'm going to carry on fitting the bits now, but I just wanted to show you where I'd got to. Okay, well, one of the first things you've got to remember is that the output switch, you'll see it there it is, comes from down in here, has been removed. And for good reason. It's because you don't need it. Well, I'll rephrase that. It's not that you don't need it, it's just that there's nowhere you can connect it to. That's the best answer. And there's more. When I'm looking at the colours to plug in, I think you can see most of them from there. Yeah, I'll cover them. Well, these across the top, the CN2, CN4 and 5 and CN1 are all fine. They're correct. As I come down here, CN3 is that colour, red, CN9's red, CN10 is white, CN11 I'll come back to, CN12 is blue, CN8 and CN7, you can see them there, are both green, and these don't apply to the 20 watt jobby that I have. On CN11, they've got, it looks like a red to me. If it's not red, well, it looks like red. That's the nicest thing I'd say. In fact, I don't have another red. My other colour is brown, and I'm quite confident that it's a brown that should be on there for a UK amplifier. Quite confident. Also, down at the bottom, these two go off to the lamp on the front of the unit. On mine, the red is on the right, looking at it like this, and there's a brown which is on the left, not a black. So we've got a brown and a red there. And that's the sort of connectivity and what I found so far. Okay, well, what you've got here is this, well, we'll call it what they call it. It's a variable auto transformer, single phase and closed type. Closed means it's in a cage, and you've got this giant knob on the top that you can turn that can take the voltage on this one from 0 to 265 volts and anything in between. You've got an input down here that you can't see, and this output here you plug onto your amp. So basically, on and off. What happens with this? This will go from no volts on this output side, yeah, and we can turn it round nice and steady. And you can see on this thing that there's a few things here going on, volts and amps and that sort of stuff. And this is something I just bought off, I think I bought it from eBay or somewhere like that. Plug her in. It'll give you a few bits of useful information as you bring the amp up, even if it's only up to 20 volts or something like that. You can see the current draw. And if the current draws, well, high, even with no tubes in and stuff like that, well, you've got a short somewhere and that sort of thing. But this device, if you haven't got one of these, honestly, this one's it's quite good, this one is. Yeah, it cost about £80 to me. I bought it again off the internet, maybe off eBay, I forget. I've had it quite a lot of years. So if you haven't got one of these, yeah, I'd invest in one if you're going to do a few amps. And if you're not, well, you need to find somebody who's got one at the very least. Now you can do certain things in a different way, and that is with a light bulb connected in, it's really in parallel. Or is it in series? No, I think it's in series to the mains. Yeah, to the mains. What happens there, if you get a high current draw when you first turn on, the light bulb will glow very, very bright and stay bright. If there's no short, it'll stay bright for a second or two and then fade down into a dull type of glow. I used to do that, but it doesn't help you really, because it doesn't give you enough information and you don't have the control over it. This particular one's a Ravistat, so there. But that's the one I've got, and I just wanted to show you that because that is what I use when I'm working on an amp. Right, well, as well as that other device we just looked at, you're also going to need a decent meter. Don't go and buy one of the cheapy crappy things. Well, this is a cheapy crappy thing, I guess. This is from what I believe, it's a one of those copy types of meters, of a fluke meter. Yeah, very good meters are fluke meters if you've got a few £100. Well, I haven't got a few £100 to waste on it, and you might not have either. So yeah, I bought the compatible, and the compatible, as you can see, comes on. I bought the leads separate, by the way. These are pretty good leads for what they are. Forget where I had them from now. What's it say here? It says 1000 volts max. Well, I suppose that's enough for me. So you do need a pretty decent sort of meter that you might want to use with your system while you're setting it all up. And I think that's pretty important. So there. Well, here it is, all sort of ready to turn on. We've got it on 0 volts, so there's not much lost here. And it's turned off down here. Yeah, seems like a plan. I could just flip the switch down here and see if anything happens, and chances are it probably won't. If it pops, it pops. That's on. Yeah, well, there's not much happening, is there? There's no voltage in. And it's turned off, which is another thing. We could turn it on and we could bring some volts up. But what you're going to see? Well, not much really as it stands. I could bring it up to a few volts and just see what happens. Well, 10 volts. I can't see any smoke yet. Can you? Oh, there you are. Yeah, well, it's been a while on this one, hasn't it? Because I sort of went away and did other things. But now I'm back on this one. And needless to say, I had various problems with different diagrams and different bits of info pretty much all the way through, because I bought this board, I guess, not that long after it was first put out there. No problem with that. But it was a bit haywire to get right. And yeah, it didn't run. And there was problems with the voltages on pin 5. Yeah, I was getting like 1.2 volts instead of, well, about 12, give or take. Yeah, a little bit strange that. And I did go back and forth to Headfirst and then to Sirius. Alex at Sirius is the man that was responsible for going and inventing this thing, or making one, shall I say. All great stuff. I didn't have much real problems with it to that point. But once I got to the point where it's 1.2 volts and I'm checking everything, you know, I didn't really get that far because there was no voltage table at the time. So it sort of guesstimate all the way through that section. So I reached out to Alex, and Alex said, oh yeah, you need to check this, check that, and check. And I checked a load of stuff and I still couldn't find anything. He said one thing. Now, I checked this board a dozen times, and you would too. And the connectors I set up exactly the same way as they were on the original Marshall board. Here's his comment. The only other option is you may have reversed CN20 or CN21, and that's those little white connectors that connect to the board. Well, you couldn't really reverse it as such. You couldn't take the plug and plug it in the socket the wrong way around, and I can tell you now, you can't do that. So I thought, well, I wonder if it is the wrong way around. So I checked pin 1 because he said, oh yeah, that's still VCC voltage as well. Yeah, so I checked the VCC voltage on pin 1 and it was 0. And I checked the VCC voltage on pin 6, and it was the correct voltage. So basically that connector was fitted the wrong way around, although it was the way around that the Marshall one had. And the problem I had, I'm not making excuses here, no, not much. The problem I had is that on the board itself, it doesn't actually tell you. There's no marker for pin 1. And if Alex ever gets to watch this, that could be a good idea to mark on the board exactly where pin 1 is, because you don't really know. And the truth is that that particular connector, CN21 I think it was, CN20, or was it? Yeah, CN20, actually has to have the cable twisted, and all the others don't. Anyway, that's where I've got to at the moment. So what I'm going to do is take the board out, fit another little 6-pin connector the other way around, and then carry on. It might solve it, it might not, but one thing I do know is it does put the right voltage in the right place, so that's a plus. I'll be back. Okay, boys and girls, after a little while, figured out what's wrong. You probably just about hear that. Probably can now. There it is. Operational. That's it for now, but there'll be a follow-up. Of course, presently, just after this little bit, when I've tidied all the mess up. And that was running at, if you can even read it, it's 241 volts and 0.22 of an amp. Okay, well, I brought me one friend round, and he's normally a bass player, but I've saddled him into playing guitar.
Saddled, that's the
Saddled,
word.
yeah. And there it is, it's still on the bench, of course. My little light isn't on, but it was, but now it isn't, so it's probably blown that one way or another. It's probably all my fault. Isn't it? Yeah. So there it is, sitting on the bench. It's got 240. I don't want to kill him now. It's got 240 volts sitting on it in 0.21 of an amp in current draw, which I think's quite nice. And I've got it in the. I heard it then. Did you hear that? Oh, yeah. It's plugged in the speaker down here. This 4x12 Marshall, and he's going to play. Yeah, it works. That's enough. Don't get carried away. I'll end up making you famous, Alice. I think.
Nothing new there then.
Yeah. So what you're hearing for the very first time is this board actually working, and I'm going to cover all the things that were wrong with it when I move this away anytime soon. But yeah, I'm going to have to get a lamp for that. Oh well, can't have everything, can you? 12 volt LED lamp. Yeah, so it's all working, and what I'm going to do is now pull out this this end pull boost. That's what it says. Do you know him? Do you know pull boost?
Pull boost, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull that out and you'll hear the difference. It really does work. So we'll be back. Well, I'll be back. He might be here.
Who knows?
Who knows? You know what these guys are like. They like, well, waifs and strays. I'm sure you got them in America as well.
Bass players.
And bass players, yeah. They're normally accompanied by drummers for some reason. I think these are the guys that have to carry the drums.
That's right. How did you know?
Been there, done that. Anyway, we'll be back soon. You can see it works, even though the light doesn't. Don't worry about that. I'll have to get another. But everything else is good, and you won't believe the reasons why it didn't work. Well, you will when I tell you. Okay, this is a section for the sort of summing up of problems that I had all the way through, off and on, for different reasons. And some of the reasons were like a bit wild. But they're all fixed now, I can tell you, because I've been back and done the checks on different things. Well, let's take a run through all of the pluses and the minuses and the aggro that I had to make this work. And it's nearly working now. The eagle-eyed view will see that there's no, oh look, there's no standby switch, which used to be a high and low power, but it doesn't work that way anymore. So let's have a quick run through of the problems that I had when I had them. And if I've already covered some of them in the video, don't worry about that, because, you know, this particular section's particularly good if you are somebody that's going to be building one. Makes sense to help other people. Now remember, these are just some of the things I did. You might be a fully qualified engineer or something like that. Well, that's different than what I am. I mean, I've been around electronics and the rest of it since about 1981, but that's another story, and I don't really want to expand on here. Yeah. So all I can tell you is, yes, I have had practice and I've built amps before. So I can solder, probably. I bought one of these second-hand for about, I don't know, £370. And I bought the board for about £60 and $25 or something like that. Something like that. To get it to England. Yeah. And then I needed a list of parts. So what I did is I made a great big massive list of parts. There they are. You can see them, and you can see they're all ticked off. Or not. And that was really the first problem, because the real problem was that the bill of materials on the first release was wildly incorrect. But of course, I didn't know that. I just went out and ordered all the parts. It's exactly what I did. So I ended up with loads of parts that actually aren't even in the amp. I've probably explained on my way through the video how I actually ordered the parts and how I determined what they were and where they fitted. Yeah, well, if you've seen that, great, and if you haven't, well, go back and watch the video, because it's definitely in there. Now, me being me, I don't really trust much or things like that. So one of the things I did, I decided to grab a screenshot of the finished amp. It proved absolutely very useful. And I recommend anybody that can do that, that can print one of them out, you're on a winner. Although it doesn't show you everything, as you will learn in a little while. I'm going to leave that one over there. Well, this next one is a sort of layout. And they provided this one as well. And I thought that was quite good. But more about this one a bit later. This again was version 1, not the later one. And that's another part of the problem. But I'll come back to that, as I will with the other stuff. You need to know about that stuff. You might have seen some of the video, on some of the earlier video, where it's not working. I put everything in the thing, thinking to myself, well, it's going to be great this, so I'll just plug in and we'll go. And needless to say, it didn't want to know. Now, part of the reason it did, well, I would say this, but the Sirius guys and Headfirst, Headfirst, those guys will probably disagree with me, but that's okay. I was here and they were there. Yeah, so when you look at the diagrams, the problem with the diagrams, remember this layout? Well, this is a later layout that they produced, and they put extra notes on and things like that. And this helped me no end, because from the image, remember that one, you can't determine a lot of this stuff. So there it was, and that was one of the things I did, is to download that and print it off, along with, you wouldn't believe me, but I don't know where it is right now, I don't really care, another bill of materials that was correct. So if you was to buy one of these boards today and go and order all the parts, they're all correct. But when I did it, they weren't. Give you some examples, because these examples are where you'll be caught out unless you're careful. And I think even on the newest bill of materials, they may or may not specify some of this stuff. Now I've got the Marshall board here. Here it is. We'll just sit it on the top for a few minutes. And if you actually look around this board, of course, when you're ordering the parts and you haven't stripped it out, you're not looking around the board. You're just wandering on and wondering why things are funny later on. Now you'll see from that image that's on the screen, you'll see these little tags that you can put into the board, and they're like, connectors that the original cables fit on. Yeah, and you've got fit them all in your board, which is no real problem. But there is a problem because they didn't actually tell you what size you needed. And there's more than one size. So Tony here, yeah, I made a guess. I think the ones I originally bought were about 6.1 or 6.2 mil. Well, they were 1/4 of an inch, at least. Yeah, I'm working inches for that little section. But what I can say to you, there are 2 connections that do actually use the 6 whatever tag. And those were CN4 and CN5, I think they are. Well, they are on the Marshall, and I think they're the same numbers. Those 2 have the bigger connectors. But all the others on this entire board have 4.9 mil connections, or spade ends, I'll call them that. Or tags, or call them what you want, you've seen them. They're all 4.9 mil, so you'll need at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'll need at least a pack of 10, and you'll need at least a couple of the 6 point whatever they are mil. Now the next thing down the road, you can just about see them. Here, there's one. But you can actually see one on the screen now. And there's a number of them. And the problem with there being a number of them is when you buy them, well, mine came in little packets like this. You can see them. Which is all great. See them? You can probably see them. Now the thing with that bill of materials, once again, there's loads and loads of types of these. And listen, if you've had no experience with what type are fitted, you've got no chance of guessing them. Well, almost, because I'm going to tell you what these are. These say that they are 5-pin EH straight PCB sockets. This one is 5-pin, there's a load of sizes. This one came from Komodo Electronics, komodoelectronics.co.uk if you're in the UK, sad if you're not, and it was part number EH-250-5A, and you got 10 of them. And this little packet here, when you've done with it, is about 20 odd quid. So it's not cheap. But back to these fitted on the board. You can't tell which way round they fit. And you mark my words, that is trouble. Got a few notes down here. Okay, CN20. It's up on this top section. Oh, let me point it up. It's not exactly the same layout as the Marshall, but they're the same connectors. The CN20 somewhere up here. Yeah, around this area. Yeah, and yeah, when I fitted it the wrong way round. So you get that? So pin 1, if you connect the cable as it should be, yeah, it's not pin 1, because it isn't the cable that's wrong, it's actually the socket that's fitted the wrong way round. Let me give you the clue. When you've got the board like that in front of you, like this, I'm referring to this bottom here, that's the answer. Because CN20 has to face down when you fit that connector. And if it doesn't face down, you'll have absolutely zero output. There'd be nothing coming out of the speakers. That's the first one. The next one I noticed that was, well, dodgy. I hold my hands up, entirely my fault, because the bill of materials and the rest didn't cover it. But CN20 also, yeah, it's sort of here. Yeah, somewhere down here, somewhere there. And CN20 also has to be facing down. So the part that is open on the connector is facing down on CN20 and CN23. But there's more. There's another small one. I think it's a 3-pin one. CN16. And you can believe this or not, CN16 has to face up. Don't even ask me why. I don't know why. But I didn't determine that from anywhere except on their video, because they did record that video, that's a screenshot, in 4K. And there's one point where he tips it up and you can just about see CN16 and where the pins are. So you can tell which orientation that connector goes in. And I don't mean in the socket, I mean the actual socket, bear that in mind. Those were 3 major problems, and thanks to the guy actually at Sirius, he pointed me in the right direction. And I'll tell you the reason why in a second. So that's very relevant if you're building one. So there I was with an assembled board, and I started working my way through things. And what I needed, what you normally need for these things, in my opinion, it's only my opinion, is you need a thing called a voltage table. And what that is, it's like a table. This is a 50-watt one, and it's not exactly correct. So you can see this was actually on the 50-watt build, but it wasn't available there on the 20-watt build. So I downloaded the 50-watt one. That's fair enough. Now some of those were way out different, and some of them were very near. But one thing I noticed on pin 5 of the preamp, on each one of those 3 tubes, I should have 12 volts, right? That's the sum, approximately 12 volts. I was getting 1.5 volts. Needless to say, the preamp was outputting nothing. And also, the little, where is it now? The little light there, you can see it, wasn't coming on. even though I was driving the amp up to 240 volts. And these two tubes here had nice voltages going through them because I could see them glowing. It's the easiest answer I could show you. But these three here were stone cold. And that was really the 1.5 volts that I was getting. Well, why was that? Well, when I spoke to the man from Sirius, he went through a load of things, and one of them was, change out the regulator because sometimes the regulator fails. Fair enough. Well, I did that and he didn't make a bean of difference. And he made one last comment. You may have reversed CN20 or CN21. And of course I went and looked, but you can't tell from this board. What you've got to do is turn it around and see if it works. Well, I did turn it round, but rather than seeing if it works, the first thing I noticed when I powered up is this little light started working because it was receiving its 12 volts. And here's a 12 volt light. And also on pin 5 of all these three, there was the juicy 12 volts. And I changed the other connections around that I've mentioned to you. And basically up it came. So those were some of the problems that I experienced. And they weren't particularly that easy to solve. And you'll say, well, Tony, you've got a piece over. I have. I've got a piece over, but this isn't the piece I need it to be. And what this is the switch that should be in that hole there. You can see that hole down there. Yeah, well, that used to be high voltage, high power or low power for the amp, but it doesn't have that anymore. But what I wanted was a standby switch so I could fill the hole in, really. Or you could just put this in and don't wire it to anything, just to fill the hole. And that'll work, but of course it doesn't do anything. So when I went and looked at this diagram, you remember this one, don't you? Yeah, this is the second one, so if you go and do it, yours will be correct. But you'll notice down here on this diagram. Anyway, basically there's a connection that you can, it says here, link STB1 and STB2 if you plan to not use a standby switch. And there's a little link going across the board. The only problem is that's a slightly later board than the one I've got, because I bought one of the early boards, let's put it that way round. And on the later boards they've got that connection, so you could put on a standby switch and wire it in that way. The standby, you can hear it now, switch is already in there. You might see a picture or two, you might not. And that's going to have a fuse between the fuse holder and the switch. And basically we solder it to the fuse holder, which isn't really that difficult. I'm already halfway there now. Yeah. And then, well, what's left after that? Well, I've already done the little pilot light. Put a new couple of connectors on the end and connected her up. And, well, I use these things. Might have showed you these earlier, but I don't think I did. And what they are, as you can see on the screen, they've got a little blue bit inside the chrome, if you will. And this silver bit pulls off, and it leaves you with the replacement for the NAF one, which I seem to have thrown away. Anyway, basically you take the 12 volt one, screws off the main connector that's fitted to the chassis. So you screw it off, and then you can remove the old the guts, if you will, as you can see on them pictures, and feed in the new one. It still looks exactly the same on the outside, and away you go. Yeah, and I know it works absolutely perfect because I've done it. So what's the score on this thing? Well, you've got to step back a little bit and understand that when I did this, it was like the first issue and the first paperwork and all the rest. And I'm pretty sure it's all increased since then, got better. I mean, some of the stuff that I had wasn't really correct. But I got there in the end, See, that's what happens when you do things in a hurry and want to get the job done and go off the first paperwork. It isn't always the best idea. It's a bit like software sometimes. It's like some of the rolling gear. When you look at the software on version 1, when it's just come out, it's not quite right. And I think that was the same with this. On the basis of version 2 paperwork, it's pretty much a 10 out of 10, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. So I can't criticise it really. Once you know about that, there's no need or necessity for low, mid, and high on the output because it's master volume and all the rest of it. I could wait all day for this fuse holder and then show you the image. Well, I might, but I might not. You might just see a picture on the screen of that. And that's really summing it up. The only thing left now is to recase it and play it. Yeah. So there. Well, there we go. I'm about to put the amp back in its case. And I've got the screws on the top and the back down there. Well, the back down here. And yeah, it's all going to be pretty good, I think. I've done the modifications in the standby, and as you can see on the screen now, I've fitted the standby switch. It connects to the well, really to the fuse holder that basically comes from the power transformer. So then it comes out of there into the switch on that red wire, and then it will go through the switch when it's turned on and back to the other side of the fuse holder where the fuse used to be for the output into the amp. Now the thing about that is that I did actually fit that fuse on the output side of the transformer, but before it got to the switch. So you've still got a HT fuse in there. Admittedly, you've got to pull the amp apart, but if you've got a HT fuse going, you've got to ask yourself, why haven't you? So yeah, let me carry on fitting it together and we'll take a look a bit further. Okay, well, there's the Origin 20, that is no more, that's turned into a roaring monster. And you can make no mistake of this, it is a roaring monster. I've already had a bit of a go with it, and yeah, I don't think you need anything else with that. People will see you playing an Origin 20 and wondering, what the hell's that? What's he done to that? How's he got that monster inside? Because if ever there was a rock amp, this is it. This is exactly it. Yeah, next time you see it, you'll be able to see it playing. And not much more I can say about that, is there? Well, you'll hear it all right. Well, here we are at the end of the road of the the Origin conversion. Yeah, into something like a monster, like I said. Yeah, well, what's coming up next? Well, I've got a thing on that Fender Tone Monster. That's going to come. What else have I got? I've got one or two other bits and pieces, including a complete amp build. And I know it's a different thing than I normally look at, but I built an amp from Tone some years back, in fact 2010, give or take. It was a Dumble clone. And this one that I'm going to be building should be interesting to most guys if you're into amps, because that one is built, again, literally from bits, but I'm going to take you through the whole thing. And it's a train wreck model, if you've heard of train wreck, Ken Fisher and all that stuff. Well, this one's a sort of all-access train wreck, so yeah, you should find that interesting. Anyway, that's enough for now. I'm not going to give you any more inkling of what I'm going to be doing, but those will be coming up. Now here's the plane. Now get out of here. Oh, there you are. Well, here's the Origin 20 in the first studio room. Here he is sitting on top of the other Marshalls that I've got. Well, some of them, some down there as well. But what you'll see, well, you'll probably hear it. There's a slight hum in the background. Maybe I'll look at that at another time, because when you're actually playing through it, it probably doesn't matter. It is a very, very loud amp. Don't want anybody to tell you that, oh, it's, you know, you can have it low, because on this one, I don't think you can. Well, I know you can't. I haven't found anywhere where you can have it well, except on the master volume. And the master volume, I've got this turned back. This here is the gain on the channel. But the master, you can see where it is, hopefully. Yeah, if I turn it up, you can hear it. And if I turn this up, oh, you've got lights going on in here. So that's probably what that is. Well, I know it is. But that's on full chat, so it would blow your head off. It's as simple as that. So you put it back where it was. And you've got this pull. Get that when you pull it out. Maybe it should have had a capacitor somewhere. I don't know. But you can turn the lights off, it probably go away. And that's what we tend to do when we record anyway. So if you haven't got anywhere that can handle that, could be a bit of a problem. But there it is. It's been running for about 2 hours now. I thought I'd leave it operational. If I drop the standby off, well, it definitely works. So that's all good. Yeah, it's still running. So it's all good so far. Okay, I've sort of got it clean. Yeah, I hope you like the guitar, by the way. It's my Les Paul Custom from a few years ago. A few clean chords, just on the camera. Well, I say clean, you can back it off. Couldn't you? Or you could play it full. Bring that up. Maybe that's a better tone actually. Yeah, very nice tone. But of course you can drive this thing from here to return to see, oh look. I don't know if you can hear that. When I'm over here, it's pretty quiet. Anyway, enough of this. You heard a bit without me going berserk here, because I could. I think I'll try and play a track.